Okay, for now, inshallah, for those that screen isn't working at the moment, inshallah, if it's not sorted, we might just all have to slightly come this way. But for now, inshallah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, we'll start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أول ما يحاسب به العبد يوم القيامة الصلاة أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Inshallah, today we'll be talking about the fiqh of salah, the fiqh of namaz, how to pray correctly, what will render our salah as incorrect and invalid. But before doing so, the first thing I want to do is to bring to our minds the importance of salah. Because the true reality is the majority of people do not pray their 5 times salah. Understanding the fiqh of salah is only worthwhile, is only important when we're actually going to pray the namaz. If we aren't praying our 5 times prayers in the first place, then understanding the fiqh of salah is useless. So I have a few hadiths to present before you. The first hadith is that the Prophet ﷺ said that بين الكفر والإيمان ترك الصلاة أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام, that between kufr and iman there is one thing, and that thing is the abandoning of salah, leaving salah. Between kufr on one side and iman on the other side, between them two, what distinguishes between them two is the abandoning of salah. So from the zahir, and what is the apparent meaning of this hadith, is that if a person leaves his salah, he will become a disbeliever. That is the apparent meaning. Another hadith is that the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-ahdu alladhi baynana wa baynahum as-salah, faman tarakaha faqad kafara. That the covenant between us and them is salah. So whoever leaves it, whoever abandons it, faqad kafara, that person has become a disbeliever. That is, again, self-explanatory in terms of the apparent meaning of the hadith. And the third hadith is Hazrat Abdullah ibn Shaqiq. He says, قال كان أصحاب محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يرون شيئا من الأعمال تركه كفر غير الصلاة. That the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they did not think of the abandonment of any actions that it was disbelief. That if they left any action out, they would class that as disbelief apart from salah. That if a person leaves his namaz out, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ would class that as disbelief. They used to think as that as disbelief. And I've only brought 3 narrations here. There are many, many more narrations. And if we look at the apparent meaning of the hadith, it says that a person, by leaving his prayer, he'll become a disbeliever. And that is the opinion, as we see, of some of the Sahaba Kiram, some of the companions. And it is the opinion of the very famous faqih, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahmatullahi alayhi, who there are 4 schools of thoughts: Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahmatullahi alayhi. So Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, his opinion was, if a person leaves his salah due to being lazy, he's being lazy, he doesn't want to read his salah, the muazzin is saying hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah, and he's still watching TV, that person becomes a disbeliever according to Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. The opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi and Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi is, such a person doesn't become a disbeliever. However, that person is worthy of being imprisoned. He should be imprisoned until he doesn't start reading his salah. So this is the importance of salah And the apparent meaning of the hadiths that I have presented before you suggests that a person becomes a disbeliever, although I've told you that is not the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayh. And one more narration comes into mind, which I mentioned in my khutbah. أول ما يحاسب به العبد يوم القيامة الصلاة. On the day of judgment, the first thing that a person will be held accountable for, the first thing that you will be questioned about on the day of judgment is namaz, as-salah. That did this person read his 5 times salah every day? Remember, 5 times salah. It's not just about reading the ones you are awake for. I am awake for Maghrib, Isha, Zohar, Asr, I can read, but Fajr, I've got work in the morning. No. It's not only those prayers which are convenient for you. Zohar and Asr, I'm at work. So I can't read Zohar and Asr, but I'm at home for Maghrib, Isha, Fajr I'll wake up for. But Zohar and Asr, who's going to go do wuzu at work time? Who's going to take out that time? It's not convenient for me. So again, all 5 times prayers, not just 5 times a week, 7 times a week for the full year. A person has to be punctual on this, on reading every single day. This is the first thing that you will be questioned about on the day of judgment. The files will be brought. Did this person read his salah? And the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that if a person is successful in this stage, then think that he will be successful in the remaining stages as well. Everything else will be easy for him, all the other matters. But if he is unsuccessful in this matter, there are deficiencies in his salah, he wasn't punctual in his salah, then think of it that the remaining stages are going to be very difficult and he's going to fail them too. So this is the importance of salah. And like I say, there are many, many, many more narrations which establish the importance of salah, but we will suffice with 3. Moving on. The next thing is the importance of reading salah correctly. Why we have come here today is to understand how the salah should be read correctly. So Hazrat Huzaifa radiallahu anhu, he is a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He once saw a person reading salah, and فَطَفَّفَ, and this person, he wasn't performing his ruku properly, he wasn't performing his sajda properly. So Hazrat Huzaifa radiallahu anhu, he called this man to him, and he said to him, how long have you been praying in this manner? So he replied that I have been praying in this manner 40 sanatan, for 40 years. And the reply of Hazrat Huzaifa is amazing. Ma sallayta mundu 40 sana. You are saying to me you've been praying namaz for 40 years. I am saying to you, you haven't been reading namaz for 40 years. You call this namaz? You're saying to me you've read for 40 years. I am saying to you, you've not read namaz. This isn't namaz. If you were to die in this state that you were reading such a prayer, you were reading like this, you would die on a religion other than the religion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you died reading namaz like this, you would die on a religion other than the religion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Again, this displays from the Sahaba Kiram that if the salah isn't correct, and it's almost as if you're abandoning the salah, and if a person abandons his salah, then that is disbelief. That is according to one school of thought. That is the meaning that they take. So again, this highlights the importance of salah. That just by doing the actions of salah, just by us being punctual on our salah, reading on time, that doesn't mean our salah is accepted. That doesn't mean that our salah is correct. There has to be an effort to correct the salah, to rectify the salah, to pray the salah in the right manner, which is why we are here. And there's one more narration that one time the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he actually saw a man entering the masjid, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam looked at this man whilst he was reading his salah. And once that person had read his salah, he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Go, salli fa innaka lam tusalli. Go read again because you haven't read namaz." He had just read and he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "No, go back and read again because you haven't read." The person came back a second time after reading his prayer. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam repeated those words again. Salli fa innaka lam tusalli. Go read again because you haven't read namaz. And this happened 2 or 3 times. And then finally, the person, after being told to read it again, he said, Ya Rasulullah, I read the best salah that I can. I did the best that I could. Now you teach me, educate me, tell me what I should do. So in this instance, you are seeing again that this person is reading his salah, he's doing all the actions, he's reading whatever was meant to be read, but what is the Prophet ﷺ saying to him? Salli fa innaka lam tusalli, go read because you haven't read. Your salah is incorrect. So what we do learn is simply doing the actions of salah, simply reading what is meant to be read doesn't mean that our salah is valid. There are certain rules and regulations and etiquettes behind the salah, and only when they are correct will our salah be correct. So inshallah, that is what we are going to study today. The first thing before we do is we're going to talk about the immiscible prayer times, when it is makruh and when it will not be allowed to read salah. Now I'm just trying to see if I can zoom in for you guys. I don't know what button F, what's it meant to be for zooming in? Anybody have any idea? F? Just okay, go on. Oh, should be clear. Jazakallah. So, when can we not read namaz? So, there are 3 times when it will be makruh to read namazes. Number 1 is sunrise. Number 2 is sunset apart from the asr of that day. So, for example, you've not read your asr and the sun is about to set, and you start before the sun sets, and you continue your namaz whilst the sun is setting. The namaz will be valid, although it will be makruh tahrimi. I'll explain this in a while. So, sunrise, sunset apart from the asr of that day. And number 3, istiwa. What is istiwa? Istiwa is when the sun is at its highest point, also known as zenith. And how do you calculate istiwa? Istiwa is between the midway point between sunrise and sunset. Now, some of you may have not heard the word istiwa, you may have heard the word zawal. The word zawal is commonly used. That technically is the incorrect word, because zawal is actually when the sun begins to decline, and that is when Zohar time starts. But many people, when they're saying makruh time, they use the word zawal, which is when the sun is at its highest point. So istiwa is when the sun is at its highest point, and that is the midway point between the sunrise and sunset. So the example of today is sunrise today was at 6:06 and sunset will be at 8:19. So altogether that is 14 hours and 13 minutes. And the halfway point between 14 hours 13 minutes is 7 hours and 6.5 minutes. So if you were to add 7.5 hours to 6:06, that would leave us with 13:13, meaning 1:13. So 1:13 would be the istiwa time, the time where the sun is at its highest point, the time where it will be impermissible to read any salah, nafil salah or qaza salah. And the scholars say, because it's hard to be precise on when the istiwa time is, they say you should give a precaution time of 3 to 5 minutes before this 13:13 and 3 to 5 minutes after. So essentially what we're saying is that it will be makruh to read any prayer 10 minutes before Zohar time starts. So we've got Zohar time 13:16 here, so you shouldn't read anything between 13:06 and 13:16. That will be classed as the makruh time, that will be labeled as the istiwa time. And like I say, some people call it zawal time, although zawal is actually when the sun begins to decline, and that is when Zohar starts. So these 3 times is when it is not permissible to read any prayers. Any prayers. Now, what about nafil prayers? There are certain rules when you can pray nafil prayers and when you can't read nafil prayers. So there are 3 times when you can't read nafil, meaning voluntary prayers. Number 1 is when the fajr time has started. So once fajr starts, you can't read, it will be makruh to read any nawafil after Fajr has started. That's number one. Number two is to read any nafil after the faraz of Fajr. So once you've read the faraz of Fajr, even after that until sunrise, it'll be makruh. And the third time that it'll be makruh to read nafil is after reading the Asr Faraz. So once you've read, like we've just read now, we've read our Asr Salah. From now all the way until the sun sets, so until 8:20, it will be makruh to read any nafil. This is why in Ramzan, on the last day of Ramzan, we suggest and we recommend to people that before you read your faraz, read 2 rakats Salatul Istighfar. Because once you've read Asr, even though there's a gap of a whole 1 hour between now and sunset, it will be makruh to read any nafil during these 3 times. So the 3 times are as soon as Fajr time starts, even after you've read the faraz of Fajr until sunrise, and number 3 after Asr until sunset. So for example, when you go Saudi as well, you do tawaf, it'll apply here as well to read those salahs during this time. Um, Apart from this, Qaza prayers. So what is the ruling of Qaza prayers? The ruling for reading Qaza is slightly different to Nafil prayers. So the 3 times I've just mentioned, they do not apply to Qaza prayers, as you can see on the screen. So Qaza prayers, they can be read after the Fajr time has started. They can be read after the faraz of Fajr as well. It's recommended about 5-10 minutes before sunrise, you should stop. And you can also read them after reading the Asr faraz as well. So the same rules as the Nafil do not apply to the Qaza prayers. You can read during those times where it's prohibited for Nafil, you can read Qaza in that time as well. Although, if you're reading your Qaza in the masjid, you shouldn't be reading your Qaza in the masjid after the faraz of Fajr or after the faraz of Asr. Why? Because essentially you're exposing yourself to the world. People will realize that this person is reading his Qaza prayers. And when you're reading your Qaza prayers, what does that mean? That means you missed the prayer in the first place. And missing the prayer in the first place was a guna, was a sin. So you're exposing yourself that you have committed a sin. So this is why the scholars write that you shouldn't read those Qaza prayers in a congregation where people will see you. You should read them alone if you are going to read in these times. And obviously from this we learn the importance of concealing when we do sins. In this day and age where every sin we do, we're uploading it on Snapchat and Instagram. I've been to this cinema, I've done this sin. Essentially, that's what we're doing. We're exposing ourselves to the world. And here the scholars are saying in the matter of a ibadat, a worship, you shouldn't even expose the sins that you've done there. So these are the times where it's not permissible to read namaz. So there's a difference between the qaza times when you can read qaza and when you can read optional prayers. The ruling for janaza and sajda tilawat is the same as qaza prayers. Okay, ruling of Fajr when the sun rises and ruling of Asr when the sun sets. So Fajr prayer, if you were to read that, for example, you woke up late and the sun is about to set, there's 2 minutes left. If the sun rises whilst you're still in namaz, your namaz will be invalid and it will have to be repeated later on. This is different to the ruling of Asr, which I mentioned to you a few minutes ago, that if you've started your Asr just before sun set and your namaz continues whilst the sun is setting, then your namaz will still be valid. So there's a difference between Fajr and Asr. That in Fajr, when the sun rises and you're still reading, namaz will have to be repeated. But when it is Asr and the sun sets, then the namaz will not have to be repeated, although it is makruh tahrimi, because 20 minutes before the sun sets, it is makruh to read even the faraz of Asr on that day. So you should read your Asr 20 minutes before the sun sets. Only when in a desperate situation, you've delayed it that long, then you read your namaz during that time. And as for the other prayers, so for example, we have Zohar left, we have Maghrib left, and we have Isha left. If you read those prayers, where 1 rakat you've read just before the time has ended, and the other rakat is read after the time has finished, then the namaz will still be valid. So the conclusion is the only time where the salah will have to be repeated is in which prayer? A bit louder. Fajr, yeah, don't whisper it, say a bit louder, yeah? So I need to know if you guys are listening. I need to know if you guys are understanding. So which prayer? Fajr prayer. So in Fajr prayer, if the sun has risen and you are halfway through your prayer, the prayer will have to be repeated. Now, we're just going to go through the rakats of each namaz. So in Fajr, you have a total of 4 rakats, 2 sunnat, which sunnat muakkada, and remember this phrase, when I say muakkada, I'll explain this at the end. So 2 sunnat muakkada, 2 faraz. In the Zohar prayer, you have 4 sunnat first, which is sunnat muakkada, then you have 4 faraz, then you'll have 2 sunnat muakkada, and then you'll have 2 nafil. In Asr, you have 4 sunnat before the Asr faraz, but as you can see, it's not highlighted in green, which means it's sunnat ghair muakkada. I'll explain this in a minute, what the difference between muakkada and ghair muakkada is. And then you have the 4 faraz, and then you don't have any sunnats or nafils after the Asr prayer. In Maghrib, you don't have any sunnats before the Maghrib, so you have 3 faraz, you have 2 sunnat muakkada, and then you have 2 nafil, totaling 7 rakats. And Isha, before the Isha, you have 4 sunnat, but is ghair muakkada. Then you have 4 faraz, then you have 2 sunnat, which is sunnat muakkada. Then you have 2 nafil, then you have 3 witr, then you have 2 nafil, which is a total of 17 rakats. Jumu'ah, you have the 4 sunnat, which is sunnat muakkada before the Jumu'ah prayer. Then you have the 2 rakats faraz, and then you have 4 sunnat and 2 sunnat, which are both sunnat muakkada after Jumu'ah. So sunnat muakkada to read 4 sunnat and then 2 sunnat, and then you have 2 nafil, which is a 14 rakats in total. So you have a few words here. Number 1 is faraz. What is faraz? Faraz is what you have to and have to do, regardless of your circumstance. Whether you are well or whether you have a flu, for example, you have a headache, etc. It's not something that's serious, you have to do it. Whether you are at home or whether you are on a journey, there are some guidelines. When a person is a musafir, there's some leeway. The 4 faraz, they are reduced to 2 faraz, but there's still faraz, so you have to read the faraz. Whether you are on the battlefield, this highlights the importance which we mentioned of namaz at the beginning. Even if you are on the battlefield, فَإِذَا كُنْتَ فِيهِمْ فَأَقَمْتَ لَهُمُ الصَّلَاةَ. In the Holy Quran, there's a method of how you should read if you are in the battlefield. So even if you are in the battlefield, you have to read your faraz prayers. So faraz, there's no way out. It must be read. Then you have wajib. Wajib, there's only one wajib namaz, which is the 3 witr in Isha. Wajib is essentially the same as a faraz prayer. It almost holds the same ranking as well. So you have to read the 3 witr as well. Then you have nafil. Nafil is voluntary. So if a person reads it, he will be rewarded. If he doesn't read it, he won't be sinful. Then you have sunnat. And there are 2 types of sunnat. One is sunnat muakkada, and muakkada means emphasize sunnat. So we should try and learn the Arabic terminology for it as well. Sunnat muakkada. Instead of me just saying the emphasized sunnat, learn the Arabic phrasing. Sunnat muakkada. And number 2 is ghair muakkada. What will that mean? If muakkada means emphasized, what do you think ghair muakkada means? No, it means not emphasized. So the sunnah that isn't emphasized. So missing sunnat ghair muakkada. So which prayers are sunnat ghair muakkada that we mentioned? This is where I'm testing you guys to keep you alert. Anybody, which prayers are not sunnat ghair muakkada? So the 4 rakat sunnat before Asr is sunnat ghair muakkada, and there's one more in Isha as well. The 4 sunnat before Isha is ghair muakkada. So ghair muakkada holds the same rank as a nafil prayer. Which is, if you read it, you will be rewarded. If you miss it, you won't be sinful. And that leaves us with one more type. What's that type? Sunnat muakkada, which we've not explained. So sunnati muakkada, what's the ruling of sunnati muakkada? Sunnati muakkada, highly emphasized sunnat, is that if a person misses this occasionally, he misses it due to some excuse, he won't be sinful. But if a person makes a habit of missing sunnati muakkada, he will be sinful. So there's actually, I have an example here. Okay, it's scrolling down too much. It's a bit slow. Journey is a completely different matter. It's a completely different masala as well. You have to read the sunnats. But for example, you're in Makkah Mukarramah, you're not traveling anywhere, and you miss it. You're on a journey. It's fine. Okay, you won't be sinful. But once a person, now today when you say sunnat, as soon as you say sunnat, and a person hears this, they say, okay, that rules out faraz, that rules out wajib. He said sunnat, that means you don't have to read it. That is the incorrect mindset. Okay, because even sunnati muakkada, you keep missing it, you will be sinful. So that's very important to remember. People think just because it's sunnat, we don't have to do it. We won't be sinful. Sinful is only when you miss a faraz or wajib. So continuously missing a sunnati muakkada also makes a person sinful. Then we have the masala of the two sunnat before Fajr. So we said sunnati muakkada, one of them is the two sunnats before Fajr. These are the most emphasized sunnats. The two sunnat before Fajr, some scholars have even classed it as wajib due to the emphasis. As in one narration, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Rak'at al-fajr khayrun min ad-dunya wa ma fiha." That the two rakats of Fajr is better than the entire world and whatever it holds. Whatever is in the world is better than that. The two rakats of Fajr. So extremely emphasize these two sunnahs before Fajr. So this brings us to the masala of when a person, for those of you that attend the Fajr with congregation. So if a person comes for the Fajr congregation and he hasn't read his two sunnat, what should he do? Because if you remember, if you read your faraz of Fajr after that, it will be makruh time. So you won't be allowed to read your two sunnat after the Fajr. You can't make that up because it'll be the makruh time as we've mentioned earlier on. And on the other hand, they're very emphasized. So if we miss them and we can't make them up later, what should we do in that scenario? So the answer to this is if you will have to do some guessing work. Depending on the time you walk in, if you think that by the time I read my two sunnat of Fajr, if I am still able to complete those two sunnat and I come back whilst the Imam is in tashahhud or before he has turned salam and I'm going to attain him whilst he's in tashahhud or before that, then you will read your two sunnat and come and join the Imam. If you are doing some guesswork or you've come extremely late whilst the Imam is in the second rakat, and now you know that if I read my two sunnat, I'm not going to attain the congregation. So in that scenario, then you will join the congregation, you will leave the two sunnat. But because these two sunnat are so emphasized, the scholars have said that once the sun has risen, after sunrise, you should make qaza of these two sunnats. Now important because when we do qaza of prayers that we've missed in the past, the only things that you will make qaza for is your faraz prayers and your wajib prayers. The sunnati muakkada, ghair muakkada, nafil prayers, you don't make qaza of those. But the scholars say that the Fajr, the two rakat sunnat of Fajr that you missed on that day, you should make that up after sunset before istiwa, before Zohar time. And obviously, if the Zohar time has started, then that's it. Time has expired to make up those two sunnats of Fajr. But this indicates how emphasized it is to read the two sunnat of Fajr. So we should ensure people get up too late and they delay their Fajr to the last 10 minutes before sunrise, 5 minutes before. Let me just quickly read my two faraz. That is incorrect. These two sunnahs before Fajr are very important. And the second, after that, the most emphasized is the two sunnat of Fajr, and at number 2 is the 4 Sunnat before Zuhr. That is at stage number 2. So if a person missed his 4 Sunnat before Zuhr, so he came into the congregation, he joined the congregation, he's not read his 4 Sunnat. When should he make those 4 Sunnat up? Two opinions. Number one, you can make those four sunnat up straight after the faraz, before you read your 2 sunnat. So remember, it's 4 sunnat, 4 faraz, then 2 sunnat. But after you read the 4 faraz, you can read your 4 sunnat then, and then your 2 sunnat, or you can read your 2 sunnat and then your 4 sunnat. Both are permissible, both will be allowed, although it's better to read the 4 sunnat after the 2 sunnat, because the actual tartib and the sequence is to read the 2 sunnat directly after the 4 faraz. So now if you start reading the 4 sunnat after that, you've messed with the sequence again. You already missed the 4 sunnat before, now you're putting those 4 sunnat in after the 4 faraz, so you've messed the sequence up again. So it's better that if you've missed your 4 sunnat before Zuhr, you've read the 4 faraz, you can read your 2 sunnat, and then you read your 4 sunnat that you missed prior to them. The Prophet ﷺ, at occasions, there were certain occasions when he missed these 4 sunnat, so he made them up later. So we should do that, even though the time for these 4 sunnat is before the 4 faraz. But if you have missed it, that doesn't mean, okay, that's it, leave it. No, you should make them up later within the time. And just whilst we're on the topic of sunnat and sunnat mu'akkada, I'll bring one more hadith of what to read in the 2 sunnat of Fajr and the 2 sunnat of Maghrib. Okay, it's not faraz, it's a sunnat, so we can do so, and on some days we can leave it as well, no problem. That Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, he says, رَمَقْتُ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ 20 مرة يقرأ في الركعتين بعد المغرب وفي الركعتين قبل الفجر قل يا أيها الكافرون وقل هو الله أحد. That Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma says that I observed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I saw him 20 times, and it's not literally 20, but many times I saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that in the 2 sunnat after Maghrib he would read Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun and Qul huwallahu ahad, and in the 2 sunnat before Fajr he would read Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun and Qul huwallahu ahad. So therefore it's sunnat for a person to read Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun and Qul huwallahu ahad in these 2 sunnats, the 2 sunnats before Fajr and the 2 sunnats after Maghrib. And like I say, it's sunnat. So if one does it, very good. On certain days you leave it, that's good as well, because it's not wajib, it's not faraz. Or if you read any of the surat as well, it's fine. But the sunnat here is you can read the Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun and Qul huwallahu ahad. And just whilst we're on this topic, one more thing of one more namaz in a surah that we can read. I quickly mention it. That we said in Maghrib there's 3 faraz, 2 sunnat, then 2 nafil. Thank you. So 2 nafil as well. What should you read in those 2 nafil of Maghrib? You can read anything. And what I'm about to tell you is not established through a hadith or anything like that. This is actually, Allama Damiri has mentioned this about Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi. That a person came to Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi and he asked him the $1 million question. What is that $1 million question? Oh Imam Sahib, tell me something, a certain action, something to read, which if I do this, then I will die upon Iman. It will be guaranteed that I will die upon Iman. Subhanallah, look at the question. So what did Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi reply to that person? That in the 2 nafil of Maghrib, if in the first rakat you read Kul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq, and in the second rakat you read Kul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, then you will die upon Iman. And it is mentioned about that person that when he died by reading the kalima. He read the kalima and then he departed the world. So this is a experienced method. Like I say, it's not something that's mentioned in the hadith, but this is a remedy provided by Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi in the 2 nafil of Maghrib. Moving on now. We are going to talk about the shara'it of Salah now. Prerequisites. What does that mean? That means if you do not the conditions for salah to be valid. If any of these conditions are missing, your salah is not valid. Your salah, it will be as if you did not commence that salah was not initiated. So even if you read the full 2 rakats, you read the full 2 rakats, you did everything, you read the longest namaz possible, you read with the most concentration possible, but these conditions, these prerequisites were not made or were not followed, then the namaz will not be valid. The namaz will have to be made up again. So the first condition is, or the first condition or prerequisite is, a person should not be in the state of major or minor impurity. Major impurity meaning being in the state where one requires ghusl, and number two, minor impurity is when a person requires wuzu. So for namaz to be valid, you shouldn't need a ghusl, and you should have wuzu. Now, when I say you shouldn't need a ghusl, I don't mean you've been to football and you're smelling and you need a shower. I mean Islamically requiring a shower, which I've mentioned before in the Tahara class a few weeks ago, is generally when you have a wet dream or you have some relations with your wife, etc. That is when ghusl will be necessary. So to read in that state is not permissible. Okay, so like I just gave the example, you needed a ghusl, but you started your namaz. You read the best namaz possible, your namaz will not be valid. You read namaz without wuzu, the namaz will not be valid. Now, just a quick misconception to clarify here, which I didn't mention in the Tahara class a few weeks ago, is some people think that when you go for wuzu, before that you have to, it's necessary and compulsory to go toilet as well. You have to go for istinja before you do wuzu. So that is incorrect. That's a misconception. If you need a toilet, good. But if you don't and you've cleaned yourself properly before this, you just need wuzu. You've passed wind, all you need to do is do wuzu, then you can just do wuzu. You don't have to go back to the toilet, force yourself to do a toilet and do wuzu as well. So some people in certain cultures, they have this misconception. They think that if you need wuzu, you have to force yourself to the toilet. So that is incorrect. Now, there's only one mustasna surat that comes to my mind, meaning one scenario where even though technically you will be impure or technically you'll be in the need of wuzu, you can still read without doing wuzu, or well, technically you will still do wuzu, but you will be impure. You'll understand when I mention this, and that is the ruling of a ma'zur. A ma'zur is such a person who has some form of illness that he is in the state of impurity for the duration of a full salah time. For a full salah time. So, which illnesses are those? For example, a person has problem with nosebleed. So once the nose starts bleeding, it just doesn't stop. For builders, they start building and you've accidentally stabbed yourself with something, you've put your hand in the machine and you have a deep wound and it's just bleeding and the blood is gushing out, it's not stopping. Or for some people, the old people especially, they have a problem of urine droplets. So it just keeps coming out, they don't even realize it sometimes. So what will be the ruling of this is, a person, like I say, he'll be classed as ma'zur. Ma'zur is the terminology for this person. You can say ill, Islamically ill if you want, or Islamically excused. Ma'zur is when this illness lasts for the duration of a full salah time. And when a person is ma'zur, then what will he have to do? As long as the illness occurs at least once in the next namaz time, it's not necessary. What will you do actually? Is you will do wuzu once at the start of the namaz time, and if that illness continues during the next namaz time, it doesn't matter. Okay, you do. For example, Asr time has started. You've done wuzu, and your blood is still coming out from your nose, your salah will still be valid. This is for a ma'zur person. This is when the illness has continued for a full salah length. Now, the usual occurrence is that it will start midway through a namaz time. So for example, somebody now, 7:25, yes? 7:25, he has a nosebleed. It's midway through the Asr time. What will this person do? He's bleeding, and that blood is not stopping. So now all the way, he can't just read his salah. He can't just say, look, the blood isn't stopping, I'm ma'zur now. No, you have to wait all the way till the final at least 10 minutes of the salah time, the time that it'll take you to do wuzu and the time it'll take you to read namaz. So you're going to delay your prayer all the way till the last 8 minutes, however long it takes for you to do wuzu and read namaz. And then you will do, in the last 10 minutes, you'll do wuzu and you'll read namaz. Right now, you're still not ma'zur because it occurred during the midway through a namaz time. Now, what will happen? You've read that namaz because we don't want it to be qaza. We don't just want to miss it. So we've still read it to present ourselves before Allah. Look, that I have an excuse, which is why I've just done wuzu and I've read namaz, but you're still not ma'zur. You will look at the next namaz time in Maghrib time. If that illness continues for the whole Maghrib time, now you will be classed as ma'zur. But if during that Maghrib time that illness stops, then you will no longer be ma'zur, and the 4 rakat faraz of Asr you read, they will also have to be repeated as well. So that is the ruling of a ma'zur person. Okay, if you want to read the masala that's written here, might be better for you. I might explain it better than what I have mentioned. And obviously, when a person is ma'zur, so for example, the illness has lasted the whole namaz time, as I mentioned, the ruling for this person is that at every namaz time, once the time has ended and the next namaz time starts, every time the namaz time ends, your wuzu will be expired and you'll have to redo the wuzu again for the next namaz time. So as soon as, for example, your ma'zur during Asr time, it lasts for the whole Asr, but as soon as Asr time finishes, it's Maghrib time, you have to do the wuzu again. And that wuzu will last you till Isha, but not for everything. So for example, you pass wind and you say, look, I don't need to do wuzu again because I'm a ma'zur. That's not how it works. The only thing because of which your wuzu won't be expired is that illness. So for example, the nosebleed. But if you do anything which results in the wuzu becoming terminated or invalidates the wuzu, such as passing wind, etc., then you'll still have to do the wuzu again. So this was a slightly tricky masla for a ma'zur person. Like I say, it's probably better for you to have a read there. It might be better. You might understand better. So that is the first condition for salah to be valid, is not to be in the state of minor impurity and major impurity. Number 2, to pray in the correct time. In the Quran Kareem, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna salata kanat alal mu'minina kitaban mawquta. Indeed, salah is necessary upon the believers at an appointed time. So every namaz time is fixed. A person accidentally reads namaz before the namaz time has started, it won't be valid. Or so if you read before the namaz time, the namaz won't be valid. Now the masala generally that will be brought up here is the masala of combining 2 prayers whilst on journey. So alhamdulillah, we've mentioned this in detail in one of our Q&A sessions. So that episode is available on YouTube. So I'm not going to explain it in detail here because I've already mentioned it. So I don't want to be repeating the same thing again. You can see that on YouTube, but I will quickly give you the conclusion and summary of what I mentioned there, is that the default position within the Hanafi school of thought. So everything we're mentioning here is according to the Hanafi school of thought. We are the followers of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi. So the default view according to the Hanafi school of thought is that you cannot join 2 prayers regardless of whether it is due to some uzr or regardless of whether you are on a journey or not. The default view is you shouldn't and you can't combine prayers even if you are on a journey. This is the default view. According to other school of thoughts, it's allowed. But the default view in the Hanafi school, it's not allowed. However, our scholars that have come afterwards, they have given us some leeway. They've said that, when a person, he knows that I'm going to miss my salah due to being on a journey, he knows if I don't read it now, if I don't combine my prayers, it will be missed. Then they have given some leeway to delay the Zohar prayer, to delay the prayer, and then you will combine it with the other prayer. So you will delay a prayer and you'll join the 2 prayers together. So you'll delay the Asr and you'll read your Zohar and your Asr together. So you'll read the Zohar at Asr time. You'll delay the Maghrib and you'll read the Maghrib whenever you read your Isha at Isha time. And worst case scenario, so that is point number one. But worst case scenario, if you have to read the salah slightly early. So, example, asr. You know that if I am going on a journey, I'm not going to get my asr. Can you push your asr forward with the zuhr? So that's step number two, that you can do that at the times of majburi, when you're absolutely desperate, when you know you're going to miss the prayer. But the actual, so number one is you don't combine your prayers. Number two, if you do, you delay the zuhr prayers. You delay the, sorry, I keep saying zuhr. You delay the asr and you delay the isha. And you combine the zuhr with the asr, and you combine the maghrib with the isha. And number three, then you say, no, look, asr I'm going to miss. Zuhr is fine. You shouldn't really, but then you can also read the asr with the zuhr. But like I say, all of this is at the time of need, when you have to and have to. Some people, they are on the motorway, okay, they're at the airport, and they think, look, we're still on a journey, let's just combine our prayers. You know, who's going to stop off at the service station? It's going to be a bit of a mission stopping off. That is the mentality, and they just think, okay, we'll just combine prayers. That is the wrong mentality. That is not the default opinion of the Hanafi school of thought. In that scenario, you have to make the effort and stop off at the service station and read the namaz at its correct time. So that was number two, to pray in the correct time. Number three, the clothes and body should be pure. Now, there are two types of impurity. One is known as najasat ghaliza, and one is called najasat khafifa. Two types of impurity. Najasat ghaliza, the heavy impurity. A few examples of the heavy impurity is that which exits the human body and necessitates wuzu. So for example, urine, stool, that if you go to the toilet your wuzu is broken, bleeding when it's flowing. This would include blood of haze, meaning for women menstruation blood, or istihada blood. It would also include a mouthful of vomit. It would also include, pus when it's flowing. So these five things which exit the human body, they are heavy impurity. Apart from this, the urine and stool of animals that cannot be eaten. Another example would be flowing blood from animals, of all animals. There are few exceptions, like for example a fish, and there are some other animals where if their flowing blood gets on your clothes, then it's not najasat ghaliza. But the general rule is flowing blood from animals, that will be ghaliza. Alcohol, so alcohol is also najasat ghaliza. Birds which do not fly, the excretion of birds which do not fly. So from this is chickens, hens, goose, ducks. Their excretion will be ghaliza. So these will be classed as the heavy impurity, najasat ghaliza. And the second type of impurity is najasat khafifa, the light impurity. The light impurity, so example of this is urine of animals that can be eaten. That is najasat khafifa. So what is the ruling? If a person starts his namaz and on his clothes there is some impurity, so the answer is that it depends on whether that impurity is ghaliza or khafifa, heavy or light. If it is a heavy impurity, which I've already given the example, so for example, for now we'll just use the example of blood. If there was blood on your clothes, if it was less than a dirham, and I mentioned in the previous Tahara class what a dirham is. A dirham is 3 to 5 centimeters in diameter. So if the impurity was less than 3 to 5 centimeters in diameter, then reading namaz in that state will be permissible, although it will be makruh tanzihi, which means slightly disliked. There are two types of makruh. One is makruh tanzihi, slightly disliked. And number two, makruh tahrimi. Tahrimi comes from haram, meaning very close to being haram. Some have said it is haram. Makruh tahrimi. So when it's less than a dirham, so the blood is less than 3 to 5 centimeters in diameter, then the namaz will be valid if you read with those clothes on. Although if you knew about this before, you should remove it. But if you didn't, or you found out after you read salah, your namaz will still be valid. Number two, that najasat ghaliza was equivalent to the size of a dirham. So it was equivalent to 3 to 5 centimeters in diameter. Then the reading salah in such a state will be makruh tahrimi. And the ruling of reading namaz when in this, when something is makruh tahrimi, or you've done that something that is makruh tahrimi, is that namaz will have to be repeated within time. So the blood was equivalent to 3 to 5 centimeters, and you realized after you've read your namaz and there's still time now, there's still 43 minutes left for Asr, it'll be wajib for you to repeat that salah again. But you've realized after Asr time, you've realized at Maghrib time, so that salah will be completed, although there will be some nuqs within that, meaning there'll be some emptiness and something void within that salah. And number three, if the impurity was more than 3 to 5 centimeters in diameter, then the ruling is that reading salah in such a state is impermissible, it is haram, the namaz will have to be repeated, whether that is in time or after time as well. So that is the ruling for najasat ghalidha. And number two, we said najasat khafifa, the light impurity. So what is the ruling for the light impurity? Is if it is equivalent to 1/4 of the limb that impurity is on. So for example, the light impurity is on your hands. If it is 1/4 of the hands or less, then fine. But if it's 1/4 or more, namaz will have to be repeated. So that's the hands, similarly the feet. And what about if it was on the clothes? Then 1/4 of the limb where the impurity is. So you'll consider 1/4 of the limb where the impurity is on. Some scholars within the Hanafi school, they've said 1/4 of the entire body. So you may hear this opinion as well, that 1/4 of the entire body. However, the more precautious opinion is 1/4 of the particular limb where the impurity is on. Now, we've mentioned this, but there's also something else to be mentioned. That we mentioned the ruling of the impurity being on the body or clothes. There's another scenario when you don't exactly have the impurity on the body or clothes, but you're carrying the impurity. So the example of this is a person has had a nosebleed, and obviously nosebleed invalidated the wuzu. He went for wuzu, he came to read namaz, he read his namaz, but he completely forgot that during the prayer he kept the tissue that was stained with blood in his pocket. So what is the ruling there? Because there the blood is not on his body, it's not on his clothes, but he's carrying it. So the answer that in this scenario, again, because blood is from which type of impurity? Heavy or light impurity? Heavy impurity. Then what will we consider? Which size? Size of a dirham, which is how many centimeters? 3 to 5 centimeters in diameter. So if the blood on the tissue was 3 to 5 centimeters in diameter, then the namaz will be invalid. If it was less than this, it will be valid. Okay, so that is the example of carrying tissue with blood. There's a few different opinions about this, but 3 to 5 centimeters. So like I say, in some books it's written 2.75. Some people have said 3 centimeters, and that's why I keep saying 3 to 5 without specifying. Some people have actually even gone up to 6 as well, but 3 to 5 centimeters is where we'll keep it at. But dirham, some people have said 50 pence coin as well. So another example of this would be underwear stained with impurity left in pocket. So for example, you have your underwear, it was stained, but you accidentally, you've done wuzu again, but you've accidentally left the underwear in your pocket. Then again, the same ruling will apply, because it'll generally be whatever the impurity is. It'll either be urine or mazi, madi, wadi, etc. Whatever that's exited the body, and we've said whatever exits the body, the impurities that exit the body are from the heavy type of impurity. So again, the same rule will be applied, that if it's less or more than 3 to 5 centimeters in diameter. And some fuqaha and some scholars have given the example here of when you go for, when you're asked to give a urine sample. So they say that, look, if you have the urine bottle in your pocket, then again the same ruling will apply. Even though it's locked in a bottle, it doesn't matter. You're still carrying the impurity. Somebody has a bottle of alcohol in their pocket, Allah forbid, but the same rule would apply. Ruling of carrying tobacco, pan, niswar. Okay, so cigarettes. Now the ruling is that cigarettes, I'm not going to mention the rule of taking cigarettes, whether that's permissible or not. I'm mentioning here about carrying cigarettes, that the cigarettes don't actually contain any impurity. Therefore, carrying them, a person who smokes, he has them in his pocket, his namaz will be valid. The same would apply for pan, and the same would apply for niswar, that they don't contain anything which is impure. Now, I've read in certain places that there is a stench to cigarettes. Now, I'm not sure how correct that is. That, not when you're actually smoking it, just the cigarette itself in the packet. If it has a stench, some people have mentioned about niswar that it has a stench. In that case, for the reason that it has a stench, you should avoid carrying it in the pocket, because that stench will cause harm to the person next to you, and at the same time it's also going to cause harm to the malaika, to the angels. So for that reason you shouldn't keep it in your pocket. But in terms of it carrying an impurity or not, then because it doesn't contain anything impure, it will be permissible. And one more masala on this is about a baby. So if a baby climbs onto your back during salah, will your namaz be invalidated or not? Because the baby, I'm talking about a baby wearing nappies. So the baby is carrying impurity, and that baby climbs onto you. Will your salah be invalidated or not? And some people actually, I've seen when they come for namaz, they, one hand they're actually lifting the babies up. So the ruling is it depends on the child and the age of the child. So if the child is just, musty wala, and he's jumping on your back, crawling on your back, and he's mischievous and he's climbed on your back himself. So, 2 years old, 3 years old, and they're just climbing on your back, etc. And they've done it on their own accord. You're not carrying them, then the salah will be valid. Regardless of how long they stay on your back or not, when they're not being supported by you, it's fine. But if the baby is younger, meaning they can't be supported by themselves, so they've come onto your lap and you're holding them, then there's two situations. If you held them for longer than the time it takes to complete one rukn, one posture, which is the time equivalent to saying Subhana Rabbi al-Azim or Subhana Rabbi al-A'la 3 times, if it's equivalent to this duration, the namaz will be invalid. And if you carried that baby for less than this time, or it was only one Subhana Rabbi al-Azim length, or two, it was less than 3, then your namaz will not be invalidated. And the third scenario is, for example, the child was on your musalla right in front of you, you had to go into sajda, and you basically, because you're going into sajda, you have to crawl over them. So now they are in contact with you, you are in contact with them, the clothes are in contact with one another. Are you considered to be carrying that impurity or not? So the answer is, in this scenario, no. Just when the clothes are touching and you're doing sajda, you're not there with the intention of holding them, you're just going to do sajda, your salah will be valid. So the ruling there is, if the conclusion of it is, if the baby can support themselves and they're climbing on you, it's fine. You're not holding them. But if you're holding them and it's more than the time length of saying Subhana Rabbi al-Azim or Subhana Rabbi al-A'la 3 times, then the salah will be invalidated. So that was condition number 3, I think, that the body and the clothes must be pure. Number 4, the place where one reads should be pure. So we mentioned the clothes and the body, now the place where you're reading. So the musalla, that should be pure as well. Now, some people, sometimes they're on a journey. When we're at home, it's fine. But sometimes people are on a journey and they've not taken a musalla with them. And they don't even have, a shirt on top, a jacket on top to put down. They ask, can we read on the bare ground? So the answer to this is, there's a principle, al-yaqeenu la yazulu bishak, that certainty is not annulled or overruled by doubt. So what is certain is that the ground was pure. Now we just have a doubt. We don't know whether the ground is impure or not, so we can't say that the doubt will overrule that is certain. What is certain, and what was certain is that the ground was pure. So you can read on the bare ground if need be. For example, like I said, you're on a journey, you can read on the bare ground without putting any clothes down. So that is one masla, and this is actually a speciality of this ummah, that the Prophet ﷺ said that I have been given superiority over the other Anbiya kiram by 6 things. And one of the things he mentioned, وَجُعِلَتْ لِيَ الْأَرْضُ مَسْجِدًا وَطَهُورًا وَفِي رِوَايَةٍ وَجُعِلَتْ لِيَ الْأَرْضُ طَهُورًا وَمَسْجِدًا, that the earth was made a means of purification, and it was made a place to read namaz for me. So this is a speciality of this nation. In the previous nations, if the namaz time would when the namaz time would enter, it would have to be read in their places of worship. Have to. But for us, wherever we are, we can read. Obviously, that's not doesn't mean we shouldn't come to the masjid, and that doesn't go against the sunnat muakkada or the wujub of coming to the masjid. That is, for example, like I say, we're traveling, etc. So in those scenarios, we can read wherever we are. Ji, yes, yeah. that's that's not, the namaz will be valid because they're not carrying an impurity, but reading namaz in such a state is makruh, and for the reason, I mentioned this as well, because of the foul stench. So the examples given in the hadith are of garlic and onions, that you shouldn't eat raw garlic and onions and come to the masjid, because you'll give taklif to the angels and the people with you. So the namaz will be valid, but it'll be makruh. Certainly you're causing harm to yourself, to the other musallis, to the malaika as well. And in narrations, Prophet ﷺ forbid people from entering the masjid after they'd ate these certain types of garlic and onions. So people, who do smoke, they should be aware of this. They should always have, perfume on, or rinse their mouth before they come. But in terms of validity of the prayer, the namaz, I'm sure, will be done. Now, what the first rule that I mentioned about reading on the background, this is when, you know, you didn't know if the ground is pure or impure. There's just a doubt. But what if you knew a certain area was certainly impure? Obviously, you can't read on that area because it's impure. But what if you put a musalla down on top of the impurity? For one, certain, you're 100% sure that this area is impure, and you put a musalla down on top of that. Will namaz be valid? The answer is, it depends on the thickness of the musalla. If it is so thick that the impurity from underneath, so for example, it was some form of liquid. If the liquid from underneath, it doesn't penetrate the musalla, on top, when you're reading from top, when you're doing your ruku, you're doing your sajda, you're putting your forehead down, there's no wetness there. You can't see that wetness, namaz will be valid. But if it was so thin, you put musalla down, but now at the top you're seeing liquid there, then obviously namaz will not be valid. So that is another masala as well. Number 5, another prerequisite is one must cover the satr. Now, satr for a man, because this is a men's session, satr for a man is from the belly button underneath, so not including the belly button, from under the navel up to where? Up to the knees, below the knees, so including the knees. That is the satr of a man. So this area must be covered during namaz and also outside of namaz. So many people now, they just wear shorts. So that satr is not only just for namaz, it's for all the time. That area should be covered. Wearing shorts isn't allowed. You will be sinful for wearing such clothes. So you must cover your satr in namaz also, which brings us to the masala which we have brought forward. It would have been discussed under things that invalidate the namaz. Something that invalidates the namaz is the opening of the satr during the namaz if it is equivalent to 1/4 of that body part. So for men, there are actually 8 body parts of the satr. The satr consists of 8 body parts. So number 1, the penis and the area around it. Number 2, the testicles and the area around it. The anus and the area around it. Number 4, the buttocks and one buttock is one part, the other buttock is another part. Number 5, the thighs along with the knees. So the thighs with the knees, that's one part. It's not just up to the knees and knees is separate. Thighs and knees is one part, and obviously that's for one leg, and the other leg, thighs and knees, front part and back part as well. And number 6, the area from the navel to the pubic region, including the sides, back, and abdomen. So, like I say, here, I mentioned a few weeks ago about cutting the hair under the navel. I said it didn't mean literally under the navel, but here, when we're talking about under the navel, it does mean literally. That under the navel literally is part of your satr, so that area underneath up to the pubic region where it finishes, i.e. just before the penis, that's part of your satr. Then also your sides, so this bit as well, from right directly from your belly button and navel, from this bit underneath, that's also part of your satr, so both sides, and behind as well. So where the belly button here is, you go directly behind that part underneath, including the back and the abdomen area. That is all part of your satr. So if 1/4 of the satr was revealed for the length it takes to complete one posture, which I've mentioned before, is the time of saying Subhana Rabbiyal Azim or Subhana Rabbiyal A'la 3 times. If the satr is open for that long, so if it just opened momentarily for a quarter or more, but it was only momentarily, namaz will not be valid. But if it was for 3 Subhana Rabbiyal Azeems or 3 Subhana Rabbiyal A'las or more, then the salah will be invalidated. That is the rule. But this is only when there was only one body part of the 8 or 7 that I mentioned. If it was only one body part, what if there were two body parts being revealed? Okay, it's a sad reality, very sad reality. So many people come on Jummah, they come in work clothes, so they're wearing shirt and they're wearing pants, but their shirts are so tight and the trousers are so tight that when they're going into ruku and sajda, what's being exposed? Back, and not only back with crack, back and crack being exposed. And it's unfortunate reality. So many people come on Friday prayer. I don't understand, when people know they're going to come for Jummah Salah, why can't you, uh, take a jubbah with you to work? Take a jubbah with you to work, or if you're going in your own car, keep it in your own car. When you come, put the jubbah on. Soon as you go outside, take the jubbah off. And the reason, obviously, we're saying this is so you ensure that your namaz is valid. There's no doubts in that. So many people, their backs are being exposed, they don't even know about it. So we should, if you know you're coming for salah, try and ensure that you're wearing clothes that will cover the entire body. It's one thing is validity of salah. Number 2 is some sharam and haya. Where's your modesty? Do you want another person to see, okay, back is okay, but when more than the back is being exposed, then, you should have some modesty there. So what if 2 body parts were being exposed? So like I said, the back with the crack, that's 2 body parts. Okay, so what you will do is, again, we'll see if it's 1/4. So both areas that being exposed will be combined, and we'll see if both body parts are equivalent to 1/4 of the smallest body part of the 2. So here you have buttock and you have back. The smaller of the 2 would be the buttock. So if it's equivalent to 1/4 of the buttock, so you have to do some guessing work. If it's equivalent to 1/4 of the buttock, then the namaz will be invalidated. And for the women, obviously, I know it's men, but when you pass this message at home, they should be extremely careful, because they have their satr isn't the same as ours. So for example, if their ear was exposed and another body part, then the smaller of the 2 body parts would be the ear. So if it is equal to 1/4 of the ear, namaz will be invalidated. So that is one thing you have to be mindful of, that we is from the prerequisites of salah, from the sharait of the salah, that our satr is covered. And obviously, if it's exposed for more than the time length, as in 1/4 or more is exposed for the time it takes to say 3 Subhan Rabbiyal Azeems, then the salah will be invalidated. And if it was less than a quarter, but more than this time, namaz will be valid. One other thing with this is wearing tight clothes. So there's two things. One is wearing tight clothes and one is wearing transparent clothes. So transparent mainly for female, but an example for men that I would have as well is sometimes you wear extremely thin white jubba that is so thin, and then underneath you don't have any trousers, or some people they wear trousers underneath, but that too is white colored. So when you go into ruku and all the clothes they attach together, you can see from ruku you can directly see their leg area, and you can see their thighs. So again, the same ruling would apply because it's transparent. If it's more than a quarter, for more than the length of or equivalent to three Subhana Rabbiyal Azim or three Subhana Rabbiyal A'las, then it'll be invalid. For women as well, wearing transparent clothes from where you can see. So when I say transparent, it means when you can see the color of the skin through that clothes, through that jubba, through that trousers, etc. And there's one thing, wearing tight clothes. So tight clothes meaning where from the outside you can see the body shape of whatever is inside. There's not much left to the imagination. So wearing such clothes is haram. You're getting guna, and the person who's looking at you, they're going to get guna as well. So you have to leave wearing such tight clothes. And this is for men and for females. For females, when they're reading namaz particularly, it's slightly more easier because they'll probably wear like a jubba on top, something baggy which will cover their tight clothes. But for men, obviously if we're wearing jubba on top, fine. But when we're just reading in trousers and shirts and it's extremely tight, then no good. So the ruling on wearing these tight clothes, the scholars have said, although wearing such clothes is haram because you're displaying everything, what's the purpose of wearing clothes? The namaz will still be valid. Although it'll be extremely disliked for wearing such clothes, but the namaz will be valid. Ji. The- Now, what I've read about this is that it's not makruh. So it's not makruh if you actually have uh, the shirt is half sleeved, then it's fine. But if, for example, I went to do wuzu and I've come back and my sleeves are like this, so I've rolled them up, took them up, and this is unsure. Even though we said half sleeve isn't makruh, but when you've rolled the sleeves up, that's makruh. So the scholars say that if you come in this state, then you should try with one hand, just roll your sleeves back down. Obviously, not with two hands, we'll get to this, that's amali kasir. With one hand, just slightly roll your sleeve down. Okay, if you want, I might have uh, a hawala for 1 second for the half sleeve not being makruh. I think it's mentioned in Ahsanul Fatawa if I'm correct. Okay, yeah, it's mentioned in Ahsanul Fatawa in the third volume on page 406. I don't have the actual writing though. So that is the ruling on that. Number 6, one must be facing the Qibla. So that is another prerequisite of the Salah. If you're not facing the Qibla, your namaz isn't valid. Now, Alhamdulillah, when we're at home, it's not really a problem. But if you're away, you're traveling, you don't know which way the Qibla is, what should you do? So you have to do the Tahri. The Tahri means you have to work out, you have to try and guess which way the Qibla is. So there's a theory in England, can't comment on it whether it's correct or incorrect, about the round satellite dishes. That the round satellite dishes, whichever way they're facing, that is corresponding the direction of the Qibla. So for example, you're stuck somewhere and you don't have your phone with you, you don't know which way to read, you look at the satellite dish, the round satellite dish that is, whichever way that's facing, that is the Qibla. Don't quote me on this. This is a theory, so I'm not sure if it's correct or incorrect. Yes, inshallah, we'll get to that. Inshallah, that's in makruhat of namaz. So here we were talking about Qibla. So you have to do some guesswork. If you don't know which way the Qibla is, you have to do some guesswork and try and work out which way the Qibla is. Now, if after you've read the Salah, so you guessed, and according to your calculations, the Qibla was that way. And after you read the namaz, somebody comes to you and they say to you that your namaz isn't done because you read the Qibla the incorrect way. The actual Qibla was that way. Brother, believe me, I'm telling you, Qibla was that way. You don't have to repeat your namaz. Your namaz is valid as long as you started that namaz through some calculations, through some guesswork. After the namaz, you find out that you read in the wrong direction, the namaz will not have to be repeated. It'll still be valid. This is one masala. Number two is if you don't start without estimating. So let's see. Okay, yes. So if a person midway through the namaz, so you calculated which way you should be facing, and your calculation said that way, and midway through the namaz, somebody came to you and they told you Qibla is that way. What should you do in that scenario? Should you break your namaz and start again? No. The answer is that in this scenario, you will just during the namaz, you will turn to the right Qibla. So you are facing that way. They're saying to you Qibla is this way. You just turn around midway through the namaz. You don't have to break the namaz. Although if there was a delay in turning to the right direction, equivalent to the time it takes to complete one posture, 3 Subhan Rabbiyal Azeems, then the namaz will be invalidated. So somebody told you Qibla is that way and you're thinking, oh no, what should I do? I wasn't paying attention in the fiqh class, what should I do? And you're thinking for 3 Subhan Rabbiyal Azeems time length, then the namaz will be invalidated. You'll have to start again. But if as soon as you were told, you just turn direction, you've only got 1 rakat left, you get 3 rakats in that direction, you will just read 1 rakat, whatever you have left facing this direction. Okay, this is also, in one narration when the Qibla was changed. So Qibla, we're talking about Qibla, that at one point it was facing towards Masjid al-Aqsa. And now, obviously, you guys know the Qibla is in Makkah Mukarramah. So when the Prophet ﷺ one time he was reading, he was facing Masjid al-Aqsa, and midway through the namaz, he was given instruction to turn around and face Makkah Mukarramah. So during the namaz, he turned around. Now the third ruling or the third masala is like we said that when you don't know which way the Qibla is necessary for you to do tahari. You have to do some sort of calculation, try and work out, use satellite dishes, you use your compass. But if you didn't do tahari, you didn't work out, you just started the namaz facing any direction you wanted. Common example would be on a plane. Okay, so you travel with Saudi Airlines, they actually have a Qibla direction, but you're traveling with another airline. You asked one of the people working on the plane, can you ask the pilot which way the Qibla is, and they don't give you an answer. You just read in any direction. You're sat down, you're reading. We'll mention this as well later on. But one of the reasons why such a namaz will have to be repeated is because you've not read facing the Qibla. So you have to face the Qibla. If you just read in any direction, that namaz will have to be repeated unless after you finish the namaz, you find out you're reading in the right direction. If you just started without doing any guesswork and through the namaz, you found out that you're reading in the right direction, you'll have to break your namaz and start again. Because what you're meant to do is do it with guesswork. When you're certain you're facing that right direction, it won't suffice. So you'll have to do it again. You'll have to start again. So these are a few masalas about facing the Qibla. It's essential to read namaz whilst facing the Qibla. If some of these masalas are slightly complex, like I say, the series or the lecture is available on YouTube, so you can also listen to it again on that. Sometimes listening to it a few times might help you. I obviously understand that understanding everything on the first time is slightly hard. So, ruling of turning the chest away from the Qibla. So when we say you have to face the Qibla, what it means is the chest should be facing the Qibla. So for example, there's few maslas here. You're looking around with your eyes. Head is facing Qibla, chest is facing Qibla. You're just looking around to see if somebody's stealing your chocolate or sweets. Okay, you shouldn't do that in namaz, but your namaz is not invalidated. There's another scenario, chest is facing Qibla, but now you moved your entire face. Oh, Chai, was you're taking a watch after namaz. So you're looking in that direction, you've completely moved the face. Okay, that's makruh tahrimi. that is severely disliked, because things like this, what you're essentially doing is you're making a mockery of the religion, making the mockery of the namaz. You know, when you're doing stuff like that, obviously there might be, I've given an example of chocolate, but something important as well. It could be in such a scenario, you know, baby's there, he's near a knife or something like that. Should I break my namaz or not? So you're looking around, makruh tahrimi, okay? But in such a scenario, it was fine, but it's still makruh tahrimi, dislike, but namaz will not be invalidated. That was turning the face around. But number three is turning the chest around. So you're facing, and now you've completely turned the chest around from the Qibla. If it's turned around by more than 45 degrees, so there's a 45-degree leeway, if it was turned more than 45 degrees, then the namaz will be invalidated. If not, then no. And another situation is, for example, this is when you turned around on your own accord. Now, if somebody pushed you or something like that, and that's why your back turned around, then there is the leeway of it being the duration of three Subhana Rabbiyal A'las. So if you quickly turn back around within that time length before it takes you to say three Subhana Rabbiyal A'las, then it'll be fine. That's when you're pushed. Okay, but if you did it according to your own accord, more than 45 degrees, namaz will be invalidated. And the last prerequisite of namaz is intention. Okay, now what is the ruling of intention in namaz? So like we've said, it's a prerequisite, it's a shart. Okay, but the question commonly asked, do you have to make a verbal intention or not? So the answer is, we mentioned this in the wuzu tahal, that intention is a matter of the heart. It's got to do with the heart. So when you know from your heart that I am reading a certain namaz, and I'm going to mention exactly what you have to know in a minute, but you know from your heart that this is what I'm reading, then that is your niyat. You know, when you stand up to read namaz, I'm reading 3 rakat faraz of Maghrib. You know that's what I'm going to read, then, but you've not said anything. That's your niyat done, because niyat is to do with the heart. So it doesn't have to be verbal. Although some scholars have recommended and said it's mustahab to verbalize the intention. The reason for this is, so instead of saying 3 rakat faraz of Maghrib, they said 3 rakat faraz of Isha, for example. Or instead of saying Maghrib, instead of saying 3 rakats validated, then you'll have to start the namaz again because your intention wasn't made. But simply a slip of tongue when what was in the heart was contrary to that, then the namaz will not be invalidated. Huh. Correcting intention in namaz. So a person, he's made a mistake in his intention. He started his namaz, and now he remembers after, once he started his namaz, that I've made a mistake in my intention. What is the ruling? So like we say, if it was simply a slip of the tongue, namaz valid or invalid? Namaz will be valid if it was simply a slip of the tongue. But if he actually said what he meant, and now in namaz, he's thinking, oh, I've made a mistake. You can't change your intention in the namaz. You'll have to start the namaz again. Okay? So making intention after the namaz has been started is not permissible. Intention is meant to be made before the namaz starts. And from this, ruling of intention when rushing from wuzu. So sometimes you're in the wuzu khana, namaz congregation has started. You've quickly, you just finished your wuzu, you've quickly come to the safs, and it's namaz time, and you've started the namaz without an intention. So obviously it depends. Verbal intention, like we said, that's not necessary. So you've quickly come and you've come with the intention that I'm coming to read Maghrib namaz. When you were coming this way, that is what you came for, to read 3 rakats faraz of Maghrib. Even though you didn't verbalize it, your namaz will be done because you've got that intention when you were coming. Intention is from the heart. So that's why your namaz will be done in that scenario. Okay. What does intention consist of? So do you have to, now this is very important because our intentions now are very long. 4 rakat faraz of Isha, and then we make, behind the imam, and we add the qibla, and we add many, many things. Okay, so what does intention consist of? Number of rakats. Do you have to say the number of rakats when you're uh, in your intention? So the answer is, it is recommended to do so, but you don't have to. So if you just said, I'm reading faraz of Maghrib, for example, and you didn't say 3 rakats, your namaz is still done. That's why even if you made the verbal mistake in the instead of saying 3, you said 4, verbal, it doesn't count anyway. But specifying the number of rakats isn't necessary in intention. So even in your heart, you forgot to, bring it to your mind how many rakats you're reading, then the namaz will still be valid. But like I say, it's still recommended. Why? Because we have so many things in our mind now that when we're starting namaz, we have no idea what we're doing. We just come with our body parts is moving around, our mind is somewhere else. So we should bring it to our attention that this is the number of rakats I am praying. So number of rakats, wa alaikum assalam, no, it does not have to be made. Number 2, number of prayer, and if it is a faraz or sunnah. So do you have to say I'm reading 3 rakats faraz of Maghrib? You have to say I'm reading 2 rakats sunnat of Maghrib? Yes or no? So the answer is when it is a faraz prayer or a wajib prayer, you must specify I'm reading 3 rakat faraz of Maghrib, or 4 rakat faraz of Zohar, 4 rakat faraz of Asr. But in a sunnat prayer, if you just said I'm reading namaz, that will actually suffice. You don't have to mention the name. In faraz and in wajib, you must say 3 rakat witr wajib, and in faraz 4 rakat faraz of Isha, for example. Like I say, all of these things, you might think I'm confusing you. Best thing is to say all of these things. Don't think it as necessary, but just to bring your mind, uh, you know, to focus what you're reading. But the reason I'm mentioning these things is if ever you forget to mention these things, you should know that my namaz is still valid or not valid. Number 3 is, do you have to make intention of facing the Qibla? So the answer is no. You don't have to specify that I'm facing the Qibla, that mu mera Qibla ka. If you don't say that, your namaz is still valid. So that's the addition. Okay. Intention of reading behind the Imam. Do you have to make intention for this? Yes. Okay. Now, like I say, intention behind reading behind the Imam, intention is to do with the heart. The Imam is reading, you've come behind, you're starting your namaz to follow him. That's the intention. The intention is there, you're reading behind him. That's your intention. Done. So even if you forget to verbalize it, as long as you know I'm reading behind him, that is fine. Okay, so that is the intention, but you have to have that acknowledgement that you're reading behind the Imam. So that is necessary. Intention of being an Imam. So Hafiz Ibrahim down there, when you become Imam, inshallah, you have to make intention of being Imam, yes or no. So the answer is, you don't have to make intention of being an Imam. Again, majority of the time, 99 times out of 100, when I'm going on that musalla, there's 3 safs, 3 rows here. I know everybody behind me is going to be following me. So that is essentially, like I say, intention. Intention is a matter of the heart. So you acknowledge that. There's another scenario, and that is when, for example, you're just reading your own salah. So this might happen to you. For those people that are reading behind, you're reading your own salah. Somebody taps you on the shoulder because they want now making you imam. So this can happen, and this is permissible as well. Obviously, you shouldn't do it. Jamaat-e-Saniya is completely different ruling. But for example, you're reading your own salah. Somebody missed the Jamaat. Now they're tapping you on the shoulder. They know you're reading Faraz as well. So they tap you on the shoulder. They're making you that imam. Now again, intention for imamat, once they've tapped you on the shoulder, they've given you the acknowledgement, they're following you, you don't have to make an intention, although the scholars then say that at that time you should acknowledge in your heart that you're leading them to be rewarded. So, to be rewarded, you'll make the intention for imamat then. And lastly, intention for women. Okay? Again, there's only handful of you here that are present that might be an imam or lead women. Directly next to another man in prayer, or directly next to the imam in prayer. So this you won't see here. You'll see this more when you go Makkah Sharif, Medina Sharif, and you're doing tawaf on the top level, and muazzin gives azan, and anybody stands anywhere. Okay, men will stand next to women. So at that time, our duty as men to move away from the women, because if you stand directly next to a woman, or you're behind the woman, then your salah is invalidated. Whether there is some leeway in haram or not, that is another masala. But I'm just talking about this. So, for example, a woman is stood next to a man. In that scenario, it will be necessary for the imam to have made intention for her namaz to be valid. But if she wasn't stood next to another man, she was just stood in the room behind. She was stood behind the men. Does the Imam have to make intention for her, yes or no? So the answer is there are two opinions. Some scholars say you have to make intention for women for their prayer to be valid, full stop. And some say no, if it depends. If they're next to a man, then yes. If not, if they're behind, then it'll be valid. Okay, so based on the fact that there are two different opinions, whoever the imam is, he should always be told that, number one, this is, if I'm stood here and there are women joining me upstairs, how am I meant to know? So the imam should be informed that women are going to be reading behind you. But if the imam didn't, we will take that second opinion that the namaz is valid as long as they aren't stood next to any men. So that is, I think, concluded our intention. Is there any other masalas remaining? Intention for qaza prayer. So if a person has missed many prayers, qaza prayers, and now he wants to make it up, how should he go about making the intention? So the way you should go about making the intention is you will say that I am reading the last Fajr prayer that I missed, or you can say that I am making the first Fajr prayer that I missed. So all you have to do is just specify that you're making a qaza prayer. Inshallah, your qaza salah will also be valid. So that was today what we've discussed is just the prerequisites of salah. The fact that you, your body, you should have wuzu and ghusl. The fact that your body and your clothes should be pure of any impurity. The place where you read should be free of any impurity. You should be facing the Qibla. You should have made an intention for salah. So these are the prerequisites. These are the sharait of namaz. Inshallah, try whatever you learned today. See if it's something that can be acted upon. Try and start acting upon it. And inshallah, there's a lot more. I thought we would have done at least the farz of namaz today. We've only managed to do the prerequisites. So inshallah, next week we will also continue the fiqh of salah. Whether that is going to be on Saturday or Sunday, it'll be after Asr. But inshallah, we'll get a message on Facebook, or we'll get a poster out informing you guys, inshallah, when that is. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this course of ours today. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us all to read salah in the correct manner. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us all to be from the muqimi salah, all those that are punctual in their salah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to read such salahs that enter us into Jannah. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.